Now, the other thing is that people certainly like their fixtures and they like their toilets. And the noise of the pressure assist toilets didn't seem to be a factor. I'm sure if we'd asked this question, 2 weeks after they moved in, it might have been, but, we were asking them, a year and a half later. And we had the odd comment about the extra cleaning required for dual flush toilets. And of course, we suggested, well, you just swap the plunger for the brush. What we tried to do for greenhouse gas was we wanted to take a look at quantifying the fact that in these study homes we were having to deliver less water, so that's less treatment costs, and the plants were pumping less, so there's less pumping energy. There's less water heating within the homes. They're using less water in the water-consuming appliances, and then at the other end we're treating less sewage from those homes. So to that end, we calculated a total of 1.1 tons of CO2 reduction per year, and that equates to about almost an 11% reduction on the CO2 budget for a home. And of course, that's based on Canadian figures. And contrary to what a lot of us think, it's only been in the last 4 or 5 years that energy costs for the summer are now outstripping energy costs for the winter. So air conditioning is a bigger user of energy in southern Ontario than our winter heating costs, which to me is pretty significant. Now, cost benefits, you see the annual water savings is about $77, energy savings is about $66, and natural gas savings is at about $75 for a whole home savings of about $218, so you've got about a 3.4-year payback. Where this is leading us, this has been all worthwhile for me and certainly in terms of what we were trying to do. After I submitted the report to committee and council in June, they came back, and I put some recommendations in there that I thought were going to get thrown out before they even made it out of staff's hands. To my surprise, it was the opposite. I was far too cynical. I now have a mandate to develop water efficiency standards for new home construction, and just the mere promotion and presence of this study has, even prior to the development of those standards, we're getting approached by builders to work on the next iteration of this project, whether it be rainwater harvesting. They see how much positive press Tribute got and what kind of rewards there is for innovative builders, that they are coming to us, which is a really nice change. And it's also, because they're coming to us, it makes my job easier. I'm no longer a raving radical because it's the builders that are asking for these things and not me. And that wasn't the case when we started this project. Some of the things that we're talking about in terms of regional standards, and again, it's going to be a suite of choices. It's not going to be anything that's mandated. It will be voluntary, but again, it's a way for us to reward innovation, because the way things have always been is that anything that deviated from the black and white of code was put to the back of the line. So we were doing the opposite. We were penalizing any kind of innovation. So we're trying to invert that process now and bring them to the front of the line. And in so doing, if they see that innovation is going to lead to a quicker approvals process, it's going to certainly engender a lot more confidence in the process, and also bring in people that are not so progressive. So you can see from the list of the types of things that we're looking at. One of the things that just floored us is that there are no specifications for topsoil. At the outset of this project, we thought, well, one of the obvious problems is a lack of topsoil. What they'll do is they'll scrape the site, pile it in a corner of the development, and then bring back some of it, but sell off the rest. And so we've got to do a couple of things. Make sure that they use it all on site, and also define what topsoil is, because when we were putting in the gardens, the site super said, "Glen, do you want to use our topsoil?" And I said, "Well, Dave, let me see it." And I had seen out of the corner of my eye when I was driving to a site office, I saw this dump truck load on the street, and I saw these huge boulders in it, and I thought, well, let me see it, if that's the same pile. So sure enough, we walked around, and that was the pile, and there was probably about a 3 or 4 cubic foot slab of clay, and I thought, well, that's not exactly topsoil. So we said, we'll bring our own in. And so it's not just a question of quantity, it's a question of quality as well. And some of the other things we were hoping to do was test hydroseeding of drought-tolerant grass rather than just assuming that we had to sod everything. The difficulty with any drought-tolerant grasses other than Kentucky bluegrass is that rye and fescues are clumping and they have really deep roots and they do not lend themselves to being cut into rolls of sod. So we thought, well, let's do a trial. So we did a trial in the adjacent sportsplex across the road from the development, and Plant had some professionals from the Guelph Turfgrass Institute, which is an arm of the University of Guelph, do the planting and in September. It rained all fall, and we didn't amend the soil because we thought, well, the builders don't amend the soil. It's going to be crappy soil. So our drought-tolerant grass seed trial drowned in the fall, and then it drowned in the spring, and we learned nothing. So we're going to have to try to do that again. So that was what I was talking about when I said don't let Bill or I do an outdoor study, because every time we do it, we get drowned. To give you an idea, in 2007, there were almost 4,700 new homes built in the region. In 2006, there were 5,000 new homes. So if you average that out and you looked at 4,800 homes built to an efficient standard, that would create capacity for another 1,000 homes. And you'd be able to defer $2.9 million in terms of infrastructure costs. So this is not an insignificant project. Thank you very, very much for giving me your attention, and I'll welcome any questions.
From a design perspective, with the reduction of water usage per home, did you see a reduction in the water service size serving each home?
That's something, because it was such a small sample, we're only dealing with, you know, a couple of hundred homes. We haven't, that's not something that we have looked at. One of the things that that Bill has, by the way, Bill Gawley has been crucial to the success of this program. He's been one of the senior consultants on this project. And one of the things that we're going to try to do is continue to track their water use to make sure that these savings are sustainable. But we know we hadn't looked at the sizing of the system.
I was just wondering about the cost of water for the typical house per gallon up in your area, and whether there's any incentives in the pricing of the water.
No, there isn't. It is about $2.50 per cubic meter, and but yes, yeah. So but in terms of currency, I mean, currency is almost, it's within a couple of cents. The difference is that I don't know what it is in mega gallons, but it's in terms of Southern Ontario, it is a little higher than the average, but that's not saying much. It's still way too cheap.
So the cost of the water usage, it doesn't pay for the infrastructure? It
is supposed to, and we are now regulated by the province to do a full cost accounting of our water infrastructure. But it's like anything, it's a sliding scale. What do you include and what don't you include? And the province hasn't come out with, although they've mandated this, and they said in 3 years hence you've got to prove to us that you're doing a full cost recovery. We're a ways away from that. They've articulated the regulations, but they haven't articulated how we get there. We're not in bad shape because we've been fairly responsible in that regard, but I'm not so sure. I'm not convinced myself that we have accounted for all the capitalization costs, and I don't think that the finance department's definition of full cost accounting is the same as mine. Thanks again. I really appreciate it.